Hello, and thank you so much for joining us on the 70 times 7 podcast. It is good to be here. Since we last recorded, there's been a lot that, at least that I've been doing. I had the opportunity to go to the beach, so that was fun. That was nice. I might have gotten a little tanner since that we last
Where'd
recorded.
you go?
Went to Ocean City, Maryland, so that's where we've
Okay.
always kind of gone growing up, and then even now since getting married, that's where me and Emily have always kind of gone. So, it's nice because where we live, it's the closest, like, full beach. There's
Sure.
probably a beach like 2.5 hours or 3, but Ocean City's, a nice little beach city and stuff like that. And so we were there, and then I went to a Forrest Frank concert. He was just in Hershey, and that was
cool.
really good. He's doing big things. It was packed. It was like 35,000 people.
Wow.
So, and they said how this tour that he's on is the biggest Christian tour like ever. Like most ticket sales, attendance, like all this crazy stuff. So
And even for secular music too, right?
no, well, I don't think he's beaten like secular music. I think Taylor Swift has like the record for like the most ever, but Forrest Frank has the most in like the Christian category.
That's
Now,
incredible.
Yeah, now I think he does have though like certain like number one hits. He was like the number one for like multiple weeks, and that was in the world. So like including secular. When it came to like his songs, like the one song, I forget which one it was. It might have been "God Is Good" or something like that, and that one was at like number one for like a couple weeks.
And he has just an incredible message too.
Yeah.
And I love how he incorporates, like the word and
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so that was a lot of
Really
fun.
cool.
So now we are approaching Father's Day weekend, and
Yeah.
so
We have a big weekend here.
yeah, I saw this thing. So they say for Mother's Day, why does it feel like when it's Mother's Day, it's all about like moms are the best, they're so great, and all this. And they said, but then when Father's Day rolls around, the sermons are like, fathers need to step up and be a true father. Like, they're like, whoa, like, imagine like for Mother's Day, you gotta be a real mom and step up. Like usually for Mother's Day, it's a lot more like lovey-dovey and soft. While like for some reason, Father's Day for the men, it's like, you're doing the wrong thing. You gotta be strong. You gotta be, so.
I think in society, moms have done, for the most part, a really great job. And unfortunately, dads haven't, for the most part. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at
It
statistics,
depends, yeah.
when you look at statistics, statistically. And so I think that's why, a lot of times people come down, on dads.
Yeah, we were just talking about John Christ. He has a podcast, and he's really funny. And like they were talking about that, they're like, we need to invite someone for Mother's Day who's gonna set the mom straight.
Yeah.
Like no more of this soft stuff. So they were joking around. But so we're rolling into Father's Day weekend here at the church. We're gonna have like a Father's Day men's breakfast, and then we have a special guest speaker, and so all that's really exciting. And so for today's episode. So actually, this week and next week, we'll kind of do like a 2-part. First, I want to kind of, just talk to you about fatherhood, what you learn, the ups, the downs, and to help maybe, fathers who are watching or maybe soon to be fathers or young fathers, just to educate, to help, to disciple people who are watching at home. And then kind of the second part, which will probably be next week, is I want to go into then the Word and kind of just see some of Jesus's like critical teachings and parables on, on who God is and how Jesus really revealed to us that God is a heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this later, but all throughout the Old Testament, up until the point of Jesus, people didn't look to God as like Abba,
Right.
But then you see Jesus use these terms like Abba, he's my father. And it was like, oh, wait, really? Like, and so we'll kind of dive into that later, and probably a little bit into next week. And so if you don't know, right? So Danny, so you're a father of four. I'm the oldest, and then there's three more under me. So three boys and a girl. And then, I feel like it's funny, we have like a whole range of like kids. We have different personalities, and then we even have Jeremiah, who has special needs. So it's like you think of like the different types of kids that people might parent, maybe. And so I think it's like interesting, because I'm just thinking about it out loud, but it's like I feel like we've covered almost all the bases on like different types of kids.
So
and
tell us, what kind of kids do we have?
Oh, boys and girls, all the types. Yep. And so, so I have a few questions just to kind of help the people, watching and listening. So when you first knew that you were becoming a father, so whenever mom revealed to you that she was pregnant, like, do you remember that day, or do you remember like those emotions, whether it's excitement, fear, surprise? Like, break down when you first remember learning that you were going to be a father.
So the real uncut story of that was actually had a little bit of a negative connotation, because that was a time in my life where I was running from God, and this was after Bible school. I already had been in ministry. The majority of my ministry at that point was music, singing and things. And then just through life circumstances and just through some bad experiences, I was trying to really figure out if I could do ministry and if I could be in ministry. And I was trying to figure out, is this really for me? And do I feel, the call of God on my life? Or is it something that I can walk away from? And unfortunately, that kind of led me down a road where I walked away from the Lord. And that lasted about 3.5 years. Now, mind you, I was newly married. And so that's maybe a story for another day. But the reality is I wasn't in a good place in life. And basically I had went back to the things that God delivered me from. And so I was like in this spiral, I was just spiraling, and things were getting really bad. And I was about to walk away from the marriage. And I was getting ready to move back to New York. And in that period, probably within 2 weeks, I was going to be leaving. And within that 2-week period is when we found out that mom was pregnant with you. And there was something supernatural then that took place, and this is where the story gets really good.
Yeah.
Is that there was a lot of frustration, and there was a lot of disconnect between me and mom, and it was all because of me and my decisions. And so I was planning on just walking away from the relationship. And I remember in those days, me and mom managed stores. So, mom managed a jewelry store, I managed a jewelry store, and then I managed a men's clothing and a men's clothing store. And so our hours were all over the place. But it just so happened that on that particular day that I found out that she was pregnant, mom had to work, but I was off that particular day. And because of the way the relationship was and the way the atmosphere was, it was very tense. I remember mom slamming something before she left for work. She slammed something on the end table next to my bed. At that point, I didn't know what she was slamming. She slammed something on the end table and then walked out and slammed the doors. And I could hear her keys and her, just walking out. And So I woke up, and when I turned, I was like, what's going on? I turned around and I looked at the end table, and it was a pregnancy test. And that's how I found out that she was pregnant with you. And something, and here's where the story shifts, something in that moment then changed me literally till today.
Yeah.
Something in that moment shifted. And I believe it was a very supernatural moment. It was a divine moment. As soon as I saw the pregnancy test, I just began to weep. And I rolled off the bed and I just laid on the floor and I just cried out to God. And it was a time of encountering Jesus, but it was a time of just rededicating my life to Christ.
Yeah.
And I still had all the concerns that I had before. I still had the questions. I still had some things that I had to work through. But there was a divine moment that took place. I like to call it the divine exchange. And that's really where you give the Lord all your pain and you give him all your mess and your nasty and your sin. And then the divine exchange is he gives you grace. He gives you forgiveness. And I felt like my life was just being flooded again with grace and forgiveness and love and strength. And I never wanted to be a dad that I couldn't be looked up to. And I knew that if I didn't change anything in that moment, who knows? I mean, I might have just been a distant father at that point. I might have not been really involved in your life at that point because mom would have been then in Pennsylvania and then I would have moved back to New York.
Yeah.
So who knows? It could have been a relationship that was distant. Who knows? But in that moment, I knew that my assignment wasn't just to be in ministry.
Yeah.
But I knew in that moment, and God spoke to me in that moment of encounter, and I was probably on the floor, probably for at least an hour, maybe more,
Yeah.
and just crying out to God. And there was this download from heaven, really just God speaking to me and bringing refreshing and healing. And the thing that was the loudest wasn't get back into ministry.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it was be the man that I've called you to be.
Yeah.
Be the man that I've created you to be.
Yeah.
And be the father, that I created you to be. And that became a big part of my assignment. From that point moving forward. And so, it was under those circumstances, that I found out that mom was pregnant with you. And, we were young too. We were really young at that point. And so, trying to figure out what does it mean to be a father? And what does that look like? When everybody experiences this in life, but you take the good, right, that you've learned or that you've witnessed from your parents, and then you throw out the bad.
Yeah.
Or, if you're watching this broadcast and you're like, you know what? I've never seen my parents. I've never met my parents, or I've never seen any good. Well, what you do is you think about the people that were in your life that you saw strength and positivity, you saw as a godly role or a positive role, a strong role of what a real man and a real woman should be. You take those things and then you throw out the rest of it. And then really that was part of my assignment. I felt like it was a goal of mine to be the best dad that I could be. I mean, nobody's perfect. I wasn't a perfect father, but I knew one thing. I had to get my life right with God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if my life wasn't right with God, if I didn't align myself with the Lord, I wouldn't have been able to be the father that I believe that he had, called me to be.
God, God created men to be, strong fathers, to be godly fathers, to, raise up, the next generation and to pour into their children and to, set up their children for, success and to do their best and all this kind of stuff. And, especially in our world today, there's like this attack on masculinity and on manlyhood and fatherhood and being strong and being, like standing up for what's right and being righteous and, there's just this fight against it. They call it toxic masculinity, and they say, "Oh, you can't be too harsh, or you can't be too strong, or you can't, whatever, And, I think it's crucial, though, like you said too. If you want to be a good father, it starts with your relationship with God. It's hard to be a good father and not have a relationship with the Lord, because you're not, God is the ultimate example as, the perfect heavenly Father. And so, I think of like when Paul, he would say, "Hey, look, follow me as I follow Christ." So as fathers, you're the leader of the house, and the goal is that you're able to say, "Follow me as I follow Christ," because ultimately that leaves in God as the leader of the house. And, I even think back to like, we've probably read these passages on the channel before, but in the Bible where it talks about husbands and it talks about wives and how they should, you can kind of in a way apply that also to like fathers and mothers, And when it talks about it, husbands, love your wife as Christ loves his church. Now, the relationship between the husband and the wife is supposed to be stronger than between the parent and the child, but you can at least apply the principle of, look, the father should be Christ-like. The father should be a leader, love his children, love, his wife, care for them, protect them, honor them, whatever it is, whatever you want to say. It's supposed to be like Christ, And so, that's definitely step one. Like, you have to make sure that your relationship with God is strong. And, it's like, so right now, me and them, we're in that season of just kind of like waiting for the time. And what you realize and what we've been told, and, I kind of already knew this, there is no time when you're like ready to be a father. And, even other people that are professionals in other aspects. So like Dave Ramsey, for example, who his profession is money. He'll even say there is no dollar amount that you should have saved until like when you have a kid. Like he goes, you have a kid. Like you don't wait till you have $100 in the bank, $1,000, and you don't wait. Like there's no money amount that can really prepare you. There's no, and ultimately I think the best thing you can do is, making sure your relationship with the Lord is at least foundated. You might not, no one's going to be perfect. You might still be growing and learning, and there's going to be a whole new chapter of life that you have to grow in the Lord with fatherhood. But at least you make sure that, you're doing what's right. You're going to church. You have a prayer life. You're reading the Word. You're fasting. You're praying. You're tithing. Right. You're living a life that's pleasing to God, and that at the very least, that can at least set you up to be ready for fatherhood. Just full dependency on God, not depending on your money, not depending on your house or whatever else. It's like if you can kind of get to that point in life where you are confident in your relationship with the Lord, well then, you go for it, But so I think that's another story too, in some ways can be more popular than we realize. Like you hear sometimes like how like a child will save like a person or a marriage. Like I've heard stories of people, drug addicts, alcoholics, and they become clean because they realize that like they were having a kid. I'll see, testimonies of like my kid saved me. Like I've been clean since they were born. Like, like just stuff like this, because there is something on the inside of us that God created us with this longing and this desire to father or to mother and to lead and to nurture and, all that kind of stuff, And maybe for some, obviously you have people who might not be able to be biological parents, but God still calls them, I believe, to be parents, whether that's spiritual parents or adopted parents or,
Yeah.
whatever it is. God has put on the inside of all of us to, you know, be a part of something that's true, like truly like bigger than ourselves. Like when you have a kid, I can only imagine it's like it becomes your life. It becomes like one of your
Sure.
focuses, and
Yeah.
it's like bigger than life. You're like, man,
Yeah.
this is my life. And I think that's on purpose, because I think it gives you insight then into the Heavenly Father, right? Like how everything that God has decided and done is with us in mind, like everything from the Old Testament, and then Jesus and his whole line, and the Israelites, and like everything that God did was with us in mind, and so it gives you some insight on how God sees us and how much we mean to God. So yeah, it's like it's super powerful when you think of it like that.
Another thing that I wanted to really instill in you guys is how to pray, how to walk by faith, and how to pray for others. And I think for me that was important because at the end of the day, there's going to come a time where you're going to have enough faith for yourself, and you're going to you're going to have to get to a place of maturity in God,
Yeah.
where you can walk by faith by yourself and then help others.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to be that example. And I remember there's a couple of things where, a couple of things, and a couple of times that I remember where I would love like showing you how to pray. And even if it was for somebody else, like I would, bring you with me, and I would say, okay, let's lay our hands on this person and pray for this person. And those were some of those, my fondest memories of that. I'll never forget, there was a woman who had major issues with walking, and I think it was predominantly her knees, I believe. You were young, and we were at a church service, and I'm praying for people at the altar, and I felt like led in my spirit to like bring you and with me and pray for people with me. And I'll never forget, like you were sitting on the front row and just kind of like watching. And then I just felt like the Lord say, like have him pray with you for people. And, I think that was probably one of the first times that happened. And that was a cool moment because, I would just pray like I normally would, but I would have you lay your hand. And so as a younger boy, you're putting, your little hand on these people. And I think there was even a moment where I asked you to pray, for somebody. And I remember vividly that woman walked and she began to run around the church and walk up and down the aisle. And it was so cool because of that moment of, you can walk by faith for yourself, and you can join other people and believe God for them as well. And so that was one of my goals, and I did that with Elisha. I did that with Bianca, and I wanted not only to live it, but I wanted to show you how to do it so that you can experience that, and that you'll never forget those moments, and know that, man, that power is available for me too. This is not just for my dad, but this, as a believer, this power is available to me. And that was really important to me because faith's important to me. My whole life, from the moment of surrendering my life to Christ, faith has been a huge part of my life. And so not only did I want to walk that out, but I wanted you guys to witness that for yourself, so that you couldn't say, man, I saw my dad do this, but I've never experienced that. And so I kind of wanted to bring you guys along and involve you so that you can see it firsthand for yourself, how God can use you. I'll never forget when I was praying for someone was having many strokes. but like literally 20, 30, 40 minutes. I mean, they were just, it was just an incredible thing, and the doctors couldn't explain it. And there was no remedy. They couldn't stop it, and they were trying their best. But this gentleman kept on having these mini strokes, one after another. And I remember I got a call late one night from his wife, and to pray for him over the phone. And I'll never forget Elisha, who we call Boo. He's 19 now, but he might have been 8 years old. Maybe he was young, maybe even younger than that. But I was in it was our first house. It was in the like the Florida room, and I was on a rocking chair, and I was praying for this gentleman that his strokes would stop, and that his brain would be healed. And there would be no repercussions, no side effects of these strokes. There wouldn't even be a mark. Because when you have strokes, it puts marks on your brain so that when you take brain scans, you can tell when you had the stroke and then like where in the brain it impacted, infected, and you can see those marks. And I said, I was praying that, man, there would not even be a mark. There would not even be a trace. Well, it just so happened that Elisha came in while I was praying, and he was like wanting to sit on my lap, and he was just like leaning on my leg and stuff. And I felt like in that moment, I felt like the Lord wanted me to have Elisha pray for George Robinson. And I said, George, is it okay if I have, we call him Boo. I said, is it okay if I put Boo on the phone and he prays for you? And he said, absolutely. And there was like no hesitation, and it was quick. And it just felt like it was just a God moment. I felt like the Lord wanted to use that moment. And I'll never forget, man, I gave Boo the phone, and he prayed, and the Lord touched George Robinson. And the stroke stopped, and no side effects. And I thought, man, and for me, I think the biggest thing for me as a father who lived by faith and loved the Lord and wanted to be used by the Lord is, I think one of my greatest desires in life was that my children would also be used by the Lord and have relationship with Christ. And so for me, that meant everything. I also think too, for me personally, and I've told many people this before, but one of the things for me that was a really big deal early on is that I would live a life that they could look at and say, my dad wouldn't do that, or like for example, I never wanted to be one of those parents that said, I can smoke cigars, but you can't, or I can drink beer, but you can't, or I can drink wine. Adults do this, but you can't. I never wanted to be that type of father. And I remember in those earlier days, I liked cigars and wine and different things in the earlier days. And, but even, I felt like the Lord said very clearly, like, never live a life where it's okay for you, and whatever it is, you fill in the blank. It's okay for you, but it's not okay for your children. I want you to be able to raise your children up in such a way and train them in such a way where they see the example in you. No matter how old they are, whether they're a child, whether they're an adult, that they see that you are the example. And that was a huge accountability piece for me, because there was moments where I wanted to do something, or I was tempted to do something, or say something, or just kind of be out of pocket or whatever. And I think a big accountability piece for me, and the Lord really used this, even still to this day.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure that I'm living my life in such a way that it pleases God, but that, it's a life that is lived, that, it's an example to my children.
Yeah.
And then I think another piece too is this whole concept of legacy, like leaving a legacy. I want to leave a godly legacy for my children. And I want to leave a legacy of the supernatural and miracles, signs and wonders, and the power of the Holy Spirit, and how God can change a life. I want to leave a godly legacy for my children, because at the end of the day, I won't always be here, but God will always be here.
Yeah.
And so, but to impact the children in such a way where I'm leaving this godly legacy, that ultimately they're looking up to God, because He's the provider of these things, and so that has really helped me.
Yeah.
To a lot of people say, is it easy for you to live a holy life? Some people ask me these questions. Is it easy for you? And I say, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, like I want to do what I want to do. There is a part of me where I can be very strong-willed, and I kind of do what I want to do and that kind of thing. And so no, I mean, I get tempted just like everybody else in different areas of life. But I think what has really helped me was putting these pieces of accountability in my life. It's men of God that I'm accountable to, but then ultimately Jesus, and then to my wife and children. And my kids never said, you're accountable to me. They never said anything like that. But
Yeah.
in my heart, I thought, I want to live my life in such a way where, it's upright, and it's not a life of shame, or obviously there's no such thing as a perfect person. But I think leaving a legacy was also a big part of what I wanted to do, and when you leave a legacy for your children, what you don't realize is the Bible actually speaks of leaving an inheritance for your children, and what it talks about, it doesn't just impact your children, but your children's children.
Yeah.
And your children's children's children. You're making an impact, and you're leaving a legacy for generations to come. I never wanted my legacy to be that, my dad drinks on the weekends.
Yeah.
And he's a functional drunk. A lot of people are like, well, I'm a functional drunk, I still go to work. I never wanted my legacy to be, he's a functional drunk. He drinks a lot, but thank God he's a functional drunk. He still worked.
Yeah.
I want that measuring stick to go a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
I realized too, over time, that in every season of fatherhood, we were talking about this morning, but every season of fatherhood changes.
Yeah.
And just like every season in life changes for all of us, every season in fatherhood changes.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I'm at a life where, my youngest will be 18 in July, and that's Jeremiah, and he has special needs, so we still make all his decisions for him. But DJ being 26, and then Bianca 24, and Elisha 19.
Yeah.
They're at an age now where, I don't make
The decision.
their decisions for them. And that's a different season.
Yeah.
It's a season of trusting that everything that you've imparted into them has now become a part of who they are.
Yeah.
And that they will balance their decision making on the things they've learned and their relationship with the Lord that they have personally.
Yeah.
You can't do everything for them. You can't make all their decisions for them. But it's a different season of life because just like me and just like anybody else, we're going to do things, and every once in a while people are going to be like, man, I wonder why they did that. Or I wonder what made them say that, or what made them do that. What made them make that decision? What made them settle with that? So I think people have those questions with everybody. So we're going to have those questions about our children, and my children are going to have those questions about me. And so, it's just one of those things, but it's interesting, but it's a privilege to be a father, and it is a big responsibility. But I count it as all joy. I think of Jeremiah a lot. He's being our youngest with severe autism, nonverbal autism. When I look at him, sometimes there's things he does that frustrates me, just like any other child.
Yeah.
There's things he does or things he doesn't do, and it frustrates me. It bothers me. Sometimes things hurt me. And learning to process, all that. But realizing in this season of his life, we're still making all his decisions.
Yeah.
And so being the best father that you can be, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not just about being a good man. It's about being a godly man. And because that impacts an amplifier.